Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today's LEGO custom build for you is on the micro scale, and it's a project I've been working on for quite a long time, and I'm finally done with the LEGO Ghost. It's the next model to be officially added to our scalable micro fleet, so that includes all of the Rebel starfighters as well as the TIE fighters from the Empire, the Millennium Falcon, and the Outrider. There's a lot I want to get through in this episode, so first let me just say you can find the building instructions at our web store. That's www.brickvault.toys. Included with each purchase is a PDF step-by-step building guide, as well as a digital parts list for ordering the pieces you're going to need online. And all the ships I've mentioned so far also have their own building guide and instructions as well. That's www.brickvault.toys. It's a great way to help support us here at the channel. And now back into the build. I did the initial measurements for the Ghost at this size a year ago, actually slightly over a year ago. And then I got pretty close to a final design roughly 6 months ago. And then I got a little bit of the builder's burnout. There was a few areas of the model that I just couldn't get to fit quite right, and shelved it like a lot of people do, until eventually I looked back at the model maybe a month ago with fresh eyes and figured out a good way to knock out all the problems I was having with the model initially. To give you guys some context, building the Ghost started with trying to fit it in an exact scale so it would fit with the rest of the micro scale ships that we have, and that presents all types of building challenges. It's kind of the point in a certain sense. Giving yourself certain restrictions as a builder forces you to be a bit more creative with your building techniques if you're trying to go for a specific type of shape and or size. And as you can see here, the proportions are pretty darn close. I think the one thing that's slightly oversized are the engines, but also at a micro scale there are certain areas of the ship that should be accentuated in order to be recognizable, similar to how someone who draws caricatures of faces would operate. Generally speaking, we try to be as proportionally accurate as possible, but a successful micro build also has to have a very recognizable set of features that can be identified quickly and easily. I was pretty fortunate to have some amazing source material to work with when designing the Ghost. We obviously had the extremely large minifig scale Ghost, which we also went to great painstaking efforts to keep it proportional and accurate to both the show as well as the model that we saw from Rogue One. And currently, we're actually finishing off the reskin of the Ghost, which will be an update for that model in the future. This is what Yavin looks like. And all right, let's get into some of the finer details of this micro scale build. Now, you've been seeing a lot of the surface of this model so far in this episode. Let's check out the underside or the underbelly of the Ghost, because even from the bottom, I really did want this thing to be as proportional as possible up to the plate and or stud. So you can see as the model spins around, I really did try to keep the cargo section and the walkway in the front scaled to just the right size if I could. And then there is kind of an interesting thing to point out in the front because of the way those wedge plates are attached in the very front slab of detailing. I had to bring in the walls by I think half of a stud in order for that bit of building to fit in the front, so you can see that it's actually built inwards just a little bit. And then as you move towards the back, you can see that clipped on little angular bit is just being held on with a bit of tension. There is sort of a similar build style there between the large scale Ghost and the small one, and there is that artificial foot also built in there because the Ghost does not stand up on its original 3-footed landing gear. Now jumping up to just a slightly higher angle, we're taking a look now at the engines as well as the Phantom fit into the back of the build. I probably tried out 10 different connections maybe for slightly different angular engine builds, but I'm pretty happy with the way they got themselves attached to the neck brackets. The Phantom itself fits in with tension, so it won't fall out of the model if you flip it over with the Phantom inside it. In terms of illegal building techniques, that's probably the most illegal thing I've done. And then the sticker detailing that makes up the black rectangular windscreen on the Phantom is just cut from some leftover Lego official stickers. I literally just cut that out of a bit of black borderline. Technically, we could have made a PDF template, but this is by far the cheaper and easier way to get that windscreen to look the way we wanted. It's a pretty basic detailing. And now moving just beyond the engines, this was the most difficult part of the build, I'd say, and I'm pretty happy actually with the final product. In order for the flat top of the Ghost to merge seamlessly with the diamond shape of that dark bluish gray back, the panel detailing of the ship here actually has to curve. Once again, I followed a similar philosophy as to how the larger scale Ghost worked, only micro scaled it down. And the secret part used to connect this subassembly in the back is a lipstick piece from Friends. Now let's flip on over towards the front. This is the main front assembly that makes up a lot of that colorful detailing here. It was my brother's idea, in fact, to get that nice curved yellow line that moves along either side of the cockpit. And this part of the build too is indeed a little bit precarious and requires some careful dexterity. The instructions have a pretty detailed walkthrough for any of the precarious parts of this build, and it's a combination of neck bracket pieces, tiles, and those cheese wedge pieces that are kind of mashed into place with just a little bit of tension. It's a really solid function once it's in place, and at the end of the day, it provides a level of detail that is nearly impossible at this smaller micro scale. This is the part of the build that we had spent a very long time tweaking and changing. Essentially, the idea was that if we could get the front of the ship to look really good, then everything else would follow, and that sort of was the case. Here are a few other different versions of what the front of the Ghost was supposed to look like, and even a much older front half of the Ghost that I probably put together maybe 6, 7, 8 months ago. And what's funny about this build is that almost nothing, basically none of the building techniques here were used in the final version. Here's a quick shot also of all the pieces that I had been setting aside in different containers throughout this last year, taking apart and putting back together certain sub areas of the model. And now that we've settled on the final design, I can finally put them all back in their separate places within the lab. Also, I'm jumping around a bit, but this time around for the Ghost, we did actually develop its own special little stand. So the stand that you see the ship attached to right now is also included with the building instructions and parts list, and I'm happy to say that it's quite versatile in your ability to pose it in different ways, and it won't fall over. It's pretty strong. The model itself is decently heavy on the top, so we had to make it a bit wide on the bottom, kind of in an oval shape, to make sure that when you tilt it from side to side it doesn't fall over. And then I kind of inadvertently made it a play function, just the way it attaches to the body of the Ghost. It's pretty strong. It's by 4 studs, and so when you wobble it back and forth, it really does get a pretty good swing going, and if you swing it too much, it'll just kind of break the lock on those mixel joints and the whole thing will be hanging off to one side. You can even see with the weight of this model that the ship kind of bends those trans clear pieces a little bit, so I'm sure that the official Lego design team in Billund would be shuddering to see their bricks bending so much. But once again, we chose to do it like this because it just kind of has a fun, clean look. Also, here's just a very quick shot of what it takes to attach and detach the Ghost from the stand. It's pretty darn simple, changing out a few of those landing gear pieces. There just ain't nothing to it, and now I might as well show off the Ghost with the rest of the micro builds that we have completed so far. Part of creating the Ghost at a very specific size is, of course, so it fits up and scales with all the other models built at this specific size as well. And that idea doesn't just stem from the fact that it's a fun building challenge like I mentioned earlier, but it also makes it easy to pose this model with the other creations within the Star Wars universe and outside of it. Just like building models accurate to fig scale like we do with the rest of our web store, every time we create something in our standardized micro scale, it feels like we are building onto a universe that is getting larger and larger with everything we create. It makes it a lot more fun to set up super big scale builds later down the line, and also in micro micro scale, you can set up space battle scenes quite easily in a way that just wouldn't be possible if you were building at a much larger size. Also, I did say recently, after we built the Tantive 4, the latest Lego set that came out recently, that the scale, the actual length of this play set model, is built to the exact length dimensions that we would build our Tantive if we were to make a custom micro scale version of it. So that's kind of cool to see that this is basically how big the ship would be compared to everything else that we've built so far. It's sort of a total happy accident, but I think that Tantive is no less than one stud off of what would be considered exact for the size comparison that we use, which is 1 stud equals 2 meters. Now, generally speaking, considering we're huge into detail and proper proportions, this Tantive is still very much looking kind of wonky, just because the size proportions of this ship were built to be kind of fun for moving around and actually playing with, and something tells me that if we tackled this ship ourselves, it would look very, very different. Either way, I think it's great that we managed to get a Lego set that matches up with the rest of these Star Wars ships. We definitely weren't planning on that. And then I almost ended this episode without showing you guys a proper uncut bit of handling for this MOC, which I do with all the videos. It's not like this model, like any custom build, doesn't come without its slightly delicate points, but this is an extremely casual model to pick up. I'm going to tell you right now that the weakest points are probably the engines. Not that they're particularly weak, but they stick out a little bit, and that's going to be the thing that catches when you're playing around or moving it around. Even at this pretty small size, none of the greebling will pop off too easily. And then you'll see here at the bottom, one of those little wedge plates can kind of pop up just ever so slightly if Lego decides to develop that new shape for a wing plate in white, which I think will probably happen. Maybe the design will slightly change. And then of course I get a little bit too confident, swinging the model around, and there you go. The engines can pop off. They are only connected by the 2 studs there in the back, which isn't too bad. And I think I've said everything I want to say about this model in this episode. So anyways, guys, if you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe. Remember, the building instructions are at our web store. That's www.brickvault.toys. If you have any ideas about another model you might want to see us do in the future, let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.